Walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, "Can't eat here." I would go to a hotel and they said, "Can't stay here." Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out.
Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we're talking about American history, American identity, and family stories and how those intersect. And I was going to just react to a short clip I saw of Baseball Hall of Famer Reggie Jackson talking about his experience playing ball in the 60s. And I still want to do that. But I got a comment today. I was kind of going back and forth with this guy a little bit. And I thought it was really relevant to fold it into this conversation. So I know it's a lot to ask, but if you will watch this till the end so that you can get a full scope of what I'm talking about. I think a lot of times people just see the title and they make an assumption or whatever. And I really want you here for this conversation. But in order to have the conversation, you need to hear my whole part of it, and then I want to hear your whole part of it. So let's jump over to Mr. Jackson first, then we'll get to this guy's comment.
Coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. People said to me today, I spoke, and they said, "You think you're a better person? You think you won when you played here in Concord?" I said, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, "Can't eat here." I would go to a hotel and they said, "Can't stay here." We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner, and they pointed me out with the N-word. "He can't come in here." Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, "We're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted." Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before, and they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old at a church here and never got indicted. They were from the Klan. Life magazine did a story on them like they were being honored. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, and Lee Myers, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you know me, or if you've been on the channel, you know sometimes I can get really emotional watching this stuff. And the clip my husband sent me actually didn't include any of this stuff. It was like a short one from X from Twitter, and it wasn't that long. And so I had seen the first part, and I hadn't heard this part, and okay, so I had a plan of what I wanted to say, but I need to change that a little bit. So before I even respond to the beautiful way that Mr. Reggie Jackson shared, I want to share a comment thread that I had today with someone. It's relevant. And then I want to kind of circle back to what Mr. Jackson shared. So bear with me. I'm sorry, I didn't have tissues because I wasn't expecting to do this. So this person had commented on one of my historical videos. It was actually the one researching Johnny Cash's first wife, Vivian. And he and Vivian were actually gone after publicly by the Klan because they were accusing him of having a Negro wife. And so I kind of covered that story and just kind of exploring what did that mean at the time. And so this person, I ended up looking him up. His name is Robert. That's all I'll say. Robert said, "What's driving all your stories and interest is your own insecurities about your own identity. You're hoping to building your confidence by feeding it with your outrage." And I always try to respond politely to people because I mean, some stuff it's like it's kind of dumb, but I want to just set a precedent for how do we respond to dumb comments with grace and love most of the time, right? And so I had responded to him and just said, I'm a historian and I just love American history. And he tried to go after me a little bit about that. There is this push, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the Black community. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Hispanic community or the Italian community or whatever. I'm talking as myself, a New Yorker and someone who has always loved history and majored in history and went to graduate school and studied history and taught history, and I'm still learning history. I love American history. There's all kinds of bad history all over the world, and all kinds of countries are dealing with terrible things right this moment. And I'm so glad that there are journalists out there covering that, and that there are people who are studying things that happened 500 years ago, 300 years ago, whatever. I study American history, and I usually focus on, from the beginning of our country to now, because that is just of the most interest to me and my family's story. And so what Mr. Jackson is, what I thought I was going to say about it was just, look, you've got this man here. He's still alive. We're not talking ancient history. This is a gentleman that you could be sitting next to at a stoplight. You could be next to him at Target or wherever you pick stuff up at the store. He could be there. And these were his experiences. Now, I hadn't heard all of these experiences. But, this idea that he was welcomed in to stay on people's couches, and even staying on the couch, there were threats to burn down the apartment building because he was in there. This is an ancient history. Now, I'm not saying that that's happening right now. I'm not saying that everyone's a victim and we've got this big race war. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have people walking around right now. This is their experience. That's someone's, I don't know if he has kids, but that's someone's dad or that's someone's grandparent. And there's no way they don't know that story. Now, the other side of the coin to this is I love how the way that he approaches this. He's saying, listen, the Klan was going after us. The Klan was doing all these disgusting things and being praised for it. And that story about the little girls, I'm a mom. My little girls are almost that age. And that is always hard for me to hear. Any child suffering, I'm going to cry, like no matter what. Okay, but we're talking about responding to his clip right here. That was hard. It should be hard. But I love how he's also quick to acknowledge, look at these. He's saying, look at, if I didn't have this white manager, these white people who were kind of standing in the gap for him and protecting him and keeping him from doing something reactionary, where he's basically saying something so reactionary where he would end up getting lynched. And this is raw. This is raw stuff. But what I loved about this conversation, even though I hadn't heard all of it, was that you see the nuance here. There are evil people and there are beautiful, good people, and they come in all colors. And what Mr. Jackson is saying here is that there were evil people who hated him because they considered him Black, and they considered him, they considered him less than for not being white. But then he's like, I also had my manager who was saying, if you can't eat here, no one's eating here. We're out of here. If you can't stay at this hotel, none of us are staying at this hotel. We're out of here. And I was I was so happy to hear that side of it, because I think, again, no pun intended, we like to paint things black and white. These were the bad guys, these were the good guys. And there, Mr. Rogers always says, he always said something to the effect of, when you're sad about how bad things are going, or if there's something scary happening, look for the people who are helping. And I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed sometimes when we look at maybe the tumultuous feelings. If you watch the news, I try not to, things happening in our nation, the way that Americans are, we are breaking apart at the seams. It feels like, very much so, like it very much feels like Americans are breaking apart at the seams, and we're not united anymore, or we're less united than we used to be. And hearing stories like this, I remember, the people who were helping. There's not a full page spread in the newspaper about that, because that's not what it was about. It was about helping their friend, protecting their friend. And I just feel so much like we are missing that element of it. It's so easy for me to be like, well, people need to do this and people ought to do that, instead of just me looking for places where I can be a person that helps in my community, in my church, in my neighborhood, in the school, where the kids are. Back to this man's comment, he listed a bunch of stuff that I should include, like black slave owners and Jewish slaves and colonial women who were taken from their homes by Native Americans, or Aztec kings who would, do terrible things. And I agree, there are terrible things in history on all sides. Humanity, in my opinion, humanity is depraved on its own. It just is. And that is been the consistent truth throughout history. But I'm not studying Aztec history. I'm not studying that far back. I'm looking just 2 generations back in my country. And to me, I'm not trying to say, just because something is closer to modern times, it's more important necessarily, but it definitely influences more, right? It definitely does. And I don't know, I was pretty taken aback by what he shared. And I'm so glad that he did. I'm so glad that he gave not only his experience, but the stories of those who stood by him. And I think we need a little bit more of that, that we need the reality. We need the raw reality of, yeah, wow, it was absolutely disgusting. Things that people endured because of racism not long ago. But there are also people who refused to go along with it. And those stories, just, it's so bittersweet, right? It's such a bittersweet thing. But it's disappointing to me that this is something that is so politicized, because if you've been hanging out with me for a while on here, I feel politically homeless. I really do. There are certain areas where I feel like I lean this way, other areas I lean this way, but overall, I'm pretty just disappointed by the way the black-white kind of conversation has been weaponized, I think, on both sides of the aisle in different ways. And I think what we need are more things like what Mr. Reggie Jackson just did. Just someone who's still here, who's willing to sit down and just share their experience. And their experience is going to be nuanced. You're going to see very evil things, and you're going to see very beautiful good things in that. And that's how we teach history. I think any other way is just being disingenuous, and I don't want that. And so, yeah, let me know if you've seen this whole Reggie Jackson clip. This was not the one that I saw on X. This one was hard. But I'm so glad to have you here with me. I really value just being able to sit here with you, and I love reading your comments, and I love having you here for this conversation. Whether you agree with me or not, I hope that we can all agree that having honest conversations, sincere conversations where we listen to the other person, is the step in the right direction. So let me know what you think about this, and we'll talk soon.